All right. Thank you, Bill. And thank you everyone for being here this evening. We would like to share information about our bond 2024. As you know, we had a bond earlier in the year that was voted down. That bond was for $45 million, and it was a very big bond. It was a lot of items because we had a very inclusive committee. We had an inclusive committee that had teachers, had community members, had administrators, and a lot of different constituent groups. And those constituent groups placed a lot of different things on that on the table that we kind of weighed them and said, oh, this is, and it was sort of a lot of items that we thought may or may not be able to really make it into a final proposal. But the committee was adamant. We wanted to hear from the committee and understand what they wanted to say. So we put that bond up. It was in two phases, and with two different bonds, I should say. There was the initial one that had most of it, and then there was a turf field on the side. What we read loud and clear from the community was that was too much. That this community was not going to support a bond like that. We chose to go out and really try to hear from the community. We wanted to understand what were the things that the community really could support, as opposed to all of the other things that we had. So we went back to the drawing board. We did what's called the thought exchange, which is kind of a neat exchange where we put information out there, and then people can react to the questions that we posed and then rate each other's comments. We had presented that to the out-of-board education meeting, and what we found was that people basically said that they could get behind something that was an infrastructure project, something that was really basic for our community. And that's kind of what we've done. We've looked at it, and we've said we've taken out anything that wasn't aidable. Everything that you're going to see in this bond is an aidable project, and everything in this bond is really about health and safety and supporting the basic instruction needs for our kids. So I'm going to turn it over to our assistant superintendent of business, Kerry Lockwood, who's going to go through the presentation, but certainly I'll be here to answer questions and probably chime in here and there, because I tend to do that. But I'm going to turn it over to Kerry, who will give you really the nuts and bolts of the concept.
So good evening. Happy to see that we have a great turnout this evening. We are also live streaming it, so if you do know anybody that couldn't make it tonight, it will be posted on the website, so anybody that's not here can go ahead and watch it at a later time within the week before we have. So with those funding limitations, what we're starting to see now is our boilers are over 45 years old, and they're starting to fall into disrepair. We're looking at just over $30,000 each year that we're putting into each boiler to try to maintain it and just make sure we have the proper heating in the buildings. The high school track out in the back is over 20 years old. It is starting to crack and see wear and tear, and which is going to start causing some safety issues. These windows here at the library, when they were originally installed, were beautiful and great. They are starting to leak. We're starting to see damage on the sills. Our guys continually replace those sills and maintain it to try to at least aesthetically make it look nice, but we're at the point those windows do need to replace to reduce or prevent any further damage in this room. And as you've seen throughout the district, if you visit us often, the curbs are starting, the concrete has settled, and there's some different cracks, unsettlings, unevenness in our curbs, and the asphalt are now past the point of just resealing. So we do reseal and budget to reseal our parking lots each year. However, I mean, we've been in a particular situation the past few years with the pandemic, not able to get work done, not able to find vendors, price escalation, putting us way out of budget. Our parking lot is at the point where resealing is no longer going to fix it. It actually has quite a bit of damage, so it does need a complete overhaul in at least the back parking lot. And we're also looking at the front loop of Clayton Huey. So just some pictures from Clayton Huey as well as the back parking lot of the damage that we're starting to see. Our guys do patch those potholes as often as they can, but then you have the winter months, you plow, it pulls all of it back up. We don't have the manpower. We have very limited staff in the facilities department. So we do have to contract out a lot of this work, which does get priced out because as a school district, you have to bid it out to the lowest bidder or use a contract that already exists through somebody else, another municipality, and they are required to pay prevailing wage. So with that, we are paying slightly more. It was a big conversation we had within the committee itself. why can't we, if I do this in my house, it's going to be a lot cheaper. In a municipality, we have to follow general municipal law, purchasing rules and regulations in order to make sure we're doing the best and the right thing by our taxpayers. So the auditorium, I'm sure all of you have been in that auditorium, especially in recent months. We are starting to see more and more disrepair. The seats are ripping, the carpet's coming up, the sound system is failing us continuously, the lights as well. The stage needs repair, the curtains have been ripping. Last summer, we did replace the back curtains through the general fund budget, but the front curtains is cost prohibitive, as well as all the other repairs and redoing of that auditorium. It's a couple $1 million. The chairs, we've looked at seat covers to see if we can temporarily do a facelift in there. Believe it or not, we're having trouble finding that. It doesn't exist. We've had the vendors come and look. So we are at a point where we're looking to completely renovate that space. That is our main hub for this district. K through 12 use that for concerts, presentations, graduations, award ceremonies. So it is the main hub of the district that we really should be going into and feeling proud of, and we really need to upgrade that space. The track, as I said earlier, starting to see a lot of wear and tear. The long jump and high jump areas are starting to have cracks that are in those spots, uneven surfaces that are occurring. It was installed 20 years ago. The useful life, we're kind of past the useful life of a normal track at this point. The boilers in both Clayton Huey as well as in this building, as well as some old water tanks that are no longer being used, but they do need to be removed off property, that are cost prohibitive through the general fund budget. As I mentioned, the windows here, the window sills, we typically see that it depends on which way the rain is coming at us, is where we start seeing the leaks and the damage coming through. And our guys are doing the best they can in order to keep it cleaner. We started to see the most of the damage, as if you've been here in the past few years, there were desks kind of up front blocking it, kind of hide the ugly. We've pulled that out, we're trying to redo this space, and in doing so, we started to see really how badly damaged the rain has done to these sills. Some other additional projects, a little bit smaller cost projects, but still larger than what we can roll into the general fund budget. Security upgrades, that includes cameras, a lockdown system, a security booth here at the high school to get into the back. ADA compliance, that's something that's regulated by law. If you're doing any projects within your building with capital bond, you have to make sure you're up to current ADA compliance. Our buildings are ADA compliant as they stand from the point in time the work was done. But we do have some upgrades to be done down at Clayton Huey. And that's more for the alarm system, for the deaf and blind, to make sure that they can see the strobe lights, and so forth. In the Clayton Huey, some crawl space areas underneath our kindergarten wing and in the old basement has some asbestos still. So we're looking to abate that. That way we are completely free of asbestos within that building. It is encapsulated right now, but we can't get anybody in. In order to go in there and do any work, we have to hire an outside company to come in to suit up in order to go in there and do it. So it would just be beneficial to us to have our guys be able to get in there in an emergency if they need to, and just get rid of that. Roof replacement, portions of this roof. If you've been here, you have children that go here, there are garbage cans throughout the building for leaks. We do seal those, do patchwork throughout the year. We budget every year within the general fund budget, some patchwork for all the roofs. But we are at a point where now we need to redo a thermoscan to see where we're at. We did one about 5 years ago, and we're starting to slowly see some damage. We're at a point we need to do it again, upgrade it, and then redo portions of the roofs here in this building. So how are we doing this, and how are we making up from the $44 million we originally presented to where we are now? We have created, back in 2021, the public approved the establishment of a capital reserve. There's no cost to the taxpayer establishing this. Any surplus funds we have at the end of the school year, we're able to push over into that reserve for future savings of capital work. As we closed the year last year, we had $1.3 million in that reserve. We intend to fund it again this year. So we are slowly building that. In order for a capital reserve to be established, voters have to approve it. In order for us to spend it, the voters have to approve it. So the board does not have authority to just go ahead and say, we're gonna take this money and go do a roof. We have to put it out to the community and they have to approve it. Projects that are done through capital reserve are aidable. So we are looking at, the different funding sources and how do we kind of get a return on investment for projects that we do. The other is our repair reserve. We have just over $480,000 in there. We've been spending that reserve over the past few years. Once we spend it, we have to, so what we do for that process is we go through a repair reserve hearing. We have a public hearing at a board meeting explaining what we're using it for, ask for public comments. The board passes resolution, we can then go use those funds. These funds have been used to replace the high school gym floor, as well as the facade that had collapsed a couple years ago in front of Clayton Huey that was cordoned off for quite a while until we were able to get funding and SED approval going. So we're kind of using those monies for those emergency repairs. We've been looking at it also for what do we have that is strictly a repair, because repairs are not aidable. So anything coming from there is a non-aidable project. For instance of redoing a roof, that's an aidable project. So we don't want to use repair reserve to redo a roof because you're not going to get money back on investment on that one. The other is what's called capital outlay projects. We implemented this a few years ago. Dr. Massera and I started putting this into the budget because essentially, as you do it's a maximum of $100,000 project within your capital work that you need to be done. You're only allowed to do it in one building each year. Once you do the project, you file for your state aid, you get the aid back immediately. And our aid ratio is at 78%. So we pay $100,000 this year, we get $78,000 back next year. So the first true hit to the budget was in the first year we did this because you didn't have the aid to offset it. We're now in a cycle where we're rolling this $100,000 each year, and it's only costing us $22,000 essentially to do these projects going forward. And we've been tackling quite a bit. We've done the installation of the bottle filling stations here in this building in year one. The girls' bathroom and the boys' bathroom here is been done in the past 2 years. And next year we are looking at the girls' and boys' bathroom in the 5th grade wing at Clayton Huey. So with that, we're limited because it's such a small dollar amount, and with the cost of escalation of prices right now, it is hard to get done some larger projects. So we are tackling some of those smaller ones, but things that really do need to be done that fit within that realm. There is talk up in Albany of increasing this. There's been talk for a few years of doing that. The Senate and Assembly, I believe, both have proposed this week to increase that number to $250,000 for next year. If that's the case, that is a huge increase for us. We can start getting a lot more projects done within each building, but that is yet to be seen. If that goes through with the governor's budget, they have to negotiate that with the governor to find out what that true number will be. So as of now, we're planning for the $100,000 to try to get bathrooms done over at Clayton Huey. So what's the cost of this? What is this on you as a taxpayer? As we said, the total bond is $13.9 million, reduced from the original $44 million. It's 78% aidable on all projects. So everything in this bond is an aidable project because we're replacing all the items. We're not repairing sidewalks, we're replacing sidewalks. If we were just repairing, it would not be an aidable project. So in doing that, that $13.9 million is 78% of that we will be getting back in state aid over the course of a 15-year payback. The estimated amount for taxpayers is $111 is what we've calculated based on the information we have currently from the assessor's office of what an average taxpayer assessed value is here in the San Marcos School District. And then working with our fiscal advisors, they cost out what an estimate would be based on the bond borrowing rates and phasing of these projects and where we would land. If you do recall, when we first put this out back in January to the board of a revote, we had originally said we were looking around $200 a taxpayer for the average taxpayer. And that was our original rough estimates, which we talked about at bond committee as well in order to determine where we were going to go with numbers. We then, since then, once the board adopted the actual bond, we went to our fiscal advisors to go ahead and do the full estimate. And with that, it came back that it was actually lower than what our rough estimates were. So there is a tax calculator on the website. The website is there. Once you go to the school's website, go to district, and then there's a bond 2024 page. And right on the front is a tax calculator. If you just take your assessed value that is shown on your tax bill and plug it in, it will tell you what your estimated impact is for this bond. The prior presentations, we had shown a 4-year phase-in because we would be borrowing over the course of the 4 years due to the cost of that bond. This one, though, is showing just the one total cost, as depending on interest rates, depending on borrowings, and also the timeline of the project, it's best to just show, once this project's done, here's what you're going to see. And most of it was, we got a lot of feedback from the community. Showing it in those 4-year terms was very confusing. So we kind of simplified it this time. So please, share the word, go out there, take a look at it so you're fully informed of what the impact could be for you in your own household. We're looking at possibly 2 to 3 years to complete the project. Everything has to be approved by a state education department. Once we have the bond approved, the architects and engineers go ahead and start building all the specs and the drawings, which has to go up to SCD, which is at this point 26-month lead time to get a permit. We can't do any work until we have a permit from SCD, and we need that permit in order to get our aid. So once approved, it's going to take a few months to start kind of pulling what projects are we going to do, drawing up those projects, getting them up to the state, and getting approval. That timeline fluctuates. It depends on how many projects they're reviewing. They are slowly hiring people up there, but that's kind of where we're at with that. And we did discuss this at our last board meeting about this process. Once the state gives us that permit to do whatever work it is at that point in time, we do have to bid out the project. So we have to make sure we have the lowest bidder. We could use current existing contracts that are out there, either through the state, through the county, piggyback off of other school districts, which we do for some of our projects. Some contractors are on them, and we can get some things that way, which will help move the projects along a little bit quicker. But we do have to make sure they're vetted. They've been in existence for so many years. The lawyers have vetted out what the contract is. So there is quite a lengthy process to kind of get this work started, unfortunately, and the biggest holdup is the education department. So this is just a rough estimate of what we're looking at in the phase category. So we're looking at potentially winter of 2025 to start. I'm not looking at the architects and engineers who are probably going to be the snake guy, because I'm very hopeful that we can start it at that point. But those would be, like I said, smaller projects, ADA compliance, security upgrades, possibly the track out in high school. So outside work cannot get done unless it's tied to an inside project in order to get aid. So we can't do that track all on its standalone project number. It has to be tied to a project that's being done indoors. Otherwise, we lose all the aid on that project. So that's just something to keep in mind as we move forward. Then we're looking at in summer of 2025 to try to really get done. A lot of those projects would be disrupted to the school day over those summer months, is where you really want to rip apart that auditorium, get in there and redo the auditorium, do the roofs, do any abatement work, so that way you have no kids in the building and there's least disruption to the operation of the district. And then finally, following summer, the window wall replacement here, the sidewalks and asphalt, and any other health and safety interior renovations that need to get done. So again, rough estimate of timeline, all depends upon the architects and engineers doing all the specs and getting everything, and then we have SCD's approval. So the vote itself is next Tuesday, or this coming Tuesday. It is being held at the Main Street Gym in Clayton Huey, as all votes have been held. Polls will open at 7 a.m. They're closed at 9 p.m. Absentee ballots are currently available with Ms. Barr in the district clerk's office. You can pick those up anytime from 8 to 4, or give her a call with your address. She will gladly mail them home to you. Absentee ballots need to be received by the district clerk by 5 p.m. the day of the vote. If you do vote absentee and then show up for the day of the vote, you will just let her know, and she'll pull your absentee out of that box so that we don't count them twice. That's it. Any questions from public comments? Yes.
What is the borrowing rate for the bond, and who pays that interest? Is that we pay the full 100% interest, or does the state also?
No, well, so the state, help me out, you have a little further information for me. So the interest rate would depend on at the specific time of borrowing. Right now, they're using an estimate of, I think it was like just above 3% is the estimate being used right now, just from what they're seeing at this time. But that all rolls into the way the state calculates the aid that you're getting back, of the 78% that you get back. So it kind of all rolls into the cost factor.
So the portion of the interest that's paid by the district comes out of regular operating budget?
It's all part of, yeah, so we would budget each year the payment and the interest expense but then we would get the aid, which would help offset those expenses each year, yes.
So how does, with the aid, when the aid comes in the following year, because that's when it kind of kick in, I would imagine, right?
So the aid starts flowing as soon as the project's complete. So that's why you wouldn't take this whole project, wait for submission and do all of it at once.
So does that money go into like a general fund that can be then recycled any which way the district wants to spend? Because
It just comes through as regular building aid. So let's say we do $5 million worth of, right, so year one, we do $5 million worth of projects.
Yeah.
We would, as soon as that project is done, we file what's called a final cost report to the state, which triggers the aid. So once that report is filed to the state, you'll start seeing your aid payments flow, which start offsetting either if we did a $5 million borrowing, or we did what's called a ban of the 13.9, which is just a bond anticipation note, knowing you're gonna bond it in the future, but in order to get the better interest rate, you would ban the projects and just keep rolling that ban over for up to 5 years, and then bond the whole thing at
So
once.
that money comes back in, pays off the TANs per se, right? The tax anticipation bill that people take, or does that money come back in and go to like the general fund that the school can use at will?
Yeah, it's revenue into the general fund,
So
Through our building.
so the 19 mil remain, or the
13.9.
13.9 remains. We still pay that no matter what, 111 a month, a year, whatever, month
Right.
or a year,
per year.
per year. The money then comes back into the general fund in which the school can.
So
go
that
to.
111 takes that money coming back into the
Gotcha.
fund.
Okay,
Yes.
just trying to make sure I understand what that.
Yes. And that's why we had the fiscal advisors work, because they do that stuff for us.
Yeah.
They take what the building aid schedule would be potentially, what is the potential interest rate for the borrowing at that time, and they have the software that we
Is
have.
there limitations when that April money comes back into the district? Is there, how does that, like, is there limitations on what you do with that money that comes back? Or is there a set way you have to spend it?
It just comes into the general aid category, so we just book it as regular revenue, which helps just offset the general.
The reason I ask that is because I know like in some of the previous meetings, we talked about next year's budget, 25, 26,
24, 25.
24, 25, 26, I'm jumping.
Oh,
Because we lose the COVID aid.
That was this year.
so this is our last year of COVID aid.
Yeah, that's what
So
I mean. So
24,
next year,
25, we
so we're
don't-
starting to lose that COVID aid, you know, is that anticipation of potentially helping us offset what we're losing for kids?
No, because
Or-
that aid coming in is just gonna offset the principal and interest we've got to pay on the project,
Gotcha,
essentially.
gotcha. Sorry.
Because where we'll see that come back.
So the TANs of the tax anticipation, didn't bring that up, because I don't want to confuse the two.
Right.
And that's essentially, as we're, you know, again, we have to run our schools, we have to pay our.
Yeah, it's private
pay our
tax.
teachers, pay our staff, and in that interim, before taxes come due, we still have to pay those bills, so that's what tax anticipation is. And then when we get the tax revenue from the local tax base, that's when we pay those.
Yep.
I got
Yeah.
here a little late, so do you mind answering the question? I just want to find out, I've been watching the news, and our governor has been severely cutting aid to Long Island specifically. They're saying we're hooked for 20, if the bond goes through, we're hooked for 22 cents on the dollar. Correct?
Well, we have a 78% ratio here.
Yeah,
Okay.
quick math, yes,
So the other 78 is coming from
The state.
aid money.
yes.
She's cutting aid. What if that money doesn't come in? Are the taxpayers on the hook for that dollar for dollar, whole 100%?
So
Because once
building
the
aid
bond
is
is
not
paid-
one that's being cut, you're guaranteed your building aid.
See?
The building aid is not an aid that's being cut, you're guaranteed your building aid. The state, that has never even been a conversation of
No,
removing.
and even the governor's rhetoric over the funding for education. Both houses, Senate and Assembly, have reinstored the inflation factor, which is one thing that was cut, as well as the safe harmless factor, and included a 3% increase on all districts. So, you know, there was a $1.3 billion increase in the revenue projections come the March 1st reconciliation. So, you know, I think that A lot of that was kind of bluster. You know, the governor's always got some things that she wants to horse trade when it comes down to working with the Assembly and the Senate. We'll see where that goes. The White House budgets just came out. They'll be printed tomorrow, actually, in fact. And then that kind of horse trading takes place, and we'll figure out where the budget lands. But it's a much better picture than it was when she dropped that first budget.
And building aid is not part of her cost.
So with this budget, they asked for, the school district is guaranteeing that they're getting that aid?
The building aid? The building aid portion of it.
The building aid portion is
70%
guaranteed.
has never been pulled out of a budget before. I can't guarantee anything, but I can tell you it has never been pulled out of it, pulled away from the budget.
And more so because voters voted for these things knowing that they're being offset by state aid. So our 78% may fluctuate. When I started here just about 6 years ago, we were at 76%. We're now at 78. That does change, and that's just basically based on the wealth factor of the district, our student counts. So there's a few factors that do go in that could potentially adjust that number very slightly. But like I said, we've actually been seeing an increase in it, so that is a positive. But as far as not being guaranteed, once you have that vote, you're doing that vote knowing you're getting that building aid to help you offset it. We actually work with the state when we do these. We've had to, what is it called? The mass maximum cost allowance that we get from the state, and they would tell us, like, you've done this amount of projects for these dollar values over the past few years. You're not going to get the 78%. You're only going to get this. We had to run that through them to guarantee to say, are we going to be fully funded with this from what we're being told in our reports? And the answer is yes. So never seen building aid. Dr. Massera's been in the industry longer than I, but haven't seen the aid ever being cut.
One more question. So the school district has been getting aid year after year.
Yes.
Why, you showed pictures of the chairs in the auditorium. With that aid that was coming in every year, why wasn't all of this maintained year after year? Why was it let to get if you had the aid? What did you do with it?
I think it's a great question, but the reality is the useful life of something. That auditorium hasn't been touched in 50 years. And so those chairs can only last so long. No matter what we do for maintenance, say we're replacing the chairs, replacing the carpet, all of that. Big ticket items like boilers, these are the kinds of things. There's somebody in our office, the district office today, that the loan just came through to replace the boiler in her home. And she was kind of chomping at the bit because she wanted that boiler replaced. Now, those are the kinds of things that we do in our homes when we replace our roofs. We have to save, we have to have a rainy day fund. That's why we tried to do some of these other things. Prior to Karen and my arrival, we didn't have capital outlay projects. Those are the $100,000 projects. We did not have a capital reserve. We now have 1.3 million in there. Those are fiscally responsible ways of getting some of these things done. But ultimately, when you've got big projects, like sidewalks and all these things, they add up over time. The way that districts do it is they put bonds up like this. What our district has not done was, basically this, in my way of thinking, I would have thought that this bond should have come in around 2018-19 because we had debt that was retiring. And generally, when you hear districts, and districts will say, at no cost to a taxpayer, we're going to get $30 million worth of work done. What that essentially means is they've got debt retiring and they initiate new debt. We allowed debt to retire prior to our arrival. The district did, and did not put up another bond. And so now this is new debt that we're coming into, where you really want to get into a habit of every so often, every 15 years or so, we've got 15 years out on this debt. 15 years from now, the responsible thing would be come back to the community and say, well, we're retiring debt, we might put some more on the books so that it's a leveling of the tax base and it doesn't have this kind of thing. But, so, just being fiscally responsible is the most important.
So basically, you put this bond forward, you work with the governor, and you know you're getting the aid. Otherwise,
The building aid.
Yeah.
The building aid, that's the short.
In terms of the $1.3 million capital reserve, was there a statutory limit in terms of how large that reserve we get?
So that was in the proposition itself that the voters approved. It's a maximum of $5 million that can go in there, but we could always establish another one. Some districts, every year they have a budget vote, they throw on their capital reserve to be established for another particular reason. We've not gotten into that cycle yet. We just got our first one on the books, so we're trying to fund that one and make sure that one is up and running so that within the next year or two, we establish another one. Because they are limited. You do put a cap at how much you put on there. For realistic purposes, you do list potential projects that would be done with that to give yourself a little flexibility, because you don't know what could come up in the time. But that the funding does sit on the books for a certain amount of years, but like I said, the struggle with that one is to spend it, even though the voters approved you establishing it for specific reasons, to spend it for the one specific reason does have to be then voter approved again. But once you do that and you're using that fund to support a project that's aidable, there's no cost to the taxpayers. So that's the benefit of having a capital reserve. That's why we really need to get rolling. You're getting the aid on that money that you've already put into savings, and you're not going out and saying, hey, taxpayers, can I use $1 million of this to do whatever the project, and then can I tax you more? That doesn't work. It's, can I use the money? We'll get 78% on that $1 million, and I'm not going to tax you more.
And can you remind me again, how is that capital reserve line funded? Is that, I can't recall, is that an actual line?
No, it's actually any surpluses that we have at the end of the school year.
And so, but is that this, look, for argument's sake, let's just say that there's $1 million surplus in a given year. Can that be divided amongst different things?
Yes.
Or does it have to go
So,
into the capital?
Every year, we have a reserve fund, and every year we examine that. If we use money out of repair reserve, we want to pay that back. And so money will go into several different buckets of reserves to try to fund them appropriately.
And that's obviously a decision that the board.
The Board of Education makes that
At the end of each
decision,
school
and
year,
it's-
yeah.
it's
It's
October when you
essentially,
should do it.
yeah, in June, you'll always see on our resolutions funding for each of the reserves at a maximum level. And then once the audit is complete at the end of the school year, we know what our true number is, which is typically around September, we'll do another resolution to delineate what the actual number is going into each of those reserves. So it's always on the board agendas, the board sets that amount. We, through our process, we make recommendations, and that's also in consultation with the auditors. But our first priority usually is to pay back whatever reserves we used in the school year. Through retirements, we pay out sick days or vacation time, whatever accrued time people might have. Whatever we pay out, if we have funds at the end of the year, we like to try to put that money back in the reserve, just for future year, because we don't budget to pay people out. We rely on that reserve. So we've been in a very good habit of the past 5 years, use money from reserves, repay the reserves, which is what's keeping us fiscally stable and healthy at this point.
Yeah, but the start of your question was basically when you establish a capital reserve, there are basically three things. You have to kind of outline, as Kerry said, the projected, what these uses might be. And the other thing you have to outline the duration. So for us, it was 10 years and $5 million, and the amount, $5 million. So those are the three ways you outline it. It has to be completely transparent to the community, and then the community.
Rich?
So just to say that the capital reserve fund, so we fund that fund using surpluses at the end of the year. Are we able to, obviously it's some tax implication, purposely add money into the budget of whatever it may be, it's definitely gonna get $100,000 and whatever surplus is
So
there?
that would have to be in the resolution that the voters approved. And we clearly stated in this particular reserve that it would only be funded through surplus.
Gotcha.
Some districts do say, yes, we will budget annually up to $500,000 each year in the transfer to capital line to put into that reserve. But as Dr. Massaro said, that reserve has got to be very transparent, very clear to the voters
Very
of what they're
specific.
approving and very specific.
Okay.
Yes, so ours specifically says it's only through surplus. And that was important for us because we wanted to make sure that the public knew that's what, we're not going to start inflating the budget by hundreds of thousands of dollars to start storing money away and
So-
taxing you on it. The purpose of that reserve is to not tax you in the future with that.
So it's been end of this year, before full school years, 4 full budgets for that fund, I think. I'm doing that right?
We're finishing up 3.
So in that three-year period, we've gone from 0 to 1.3 using surplus
Yes.
funds. Okay. Thank you.
we put most of our surplus into there. We paid back the reserves we used.
Sure.
And then, and by virtue of, conversations with the board and knowing we have a lot of projects, so what we do, how this all gets established, going back to like day one of creating a bond list, we do what's called a building condition survey. That's done every 5 years, and that was done 2021. And what we do is with our architects and engineers is they walk the buildings, they talk to all the administrators, they talk to staff to find out, hey, what's going on? What's in disrepair? What needs upgrades? What would you like to see? Kind of what is also your wish list items? And they build out a 5-year plan for us from that building condition survey. It's also called a BCS. You'll hear us refer to it a lot. That became our Bible to create what the bond is. So that was shared with the entire committee. Facilities committee is also highly involved in that report and going through all those items and why are they on there. Those items are put also into priority order. So, and it's based surely on health and safety is priority number 1, and then kind of it goes down to 4, 5 categories. So we took that from then, hashed it out, took the list, and said, what do we want? What do we need to see? What's priority 1s? What's priority 2s? When can we get these things done? How can we do them? A lot of those items we've checked off the list just through the general fund budget that we have budgeted for repairs and replacements of things through the general fund budget. The larger ticket items are what you're starting to see in the bond now. We are up for a building condition survey. This year is our year to do one again. So we are working on that again. We also did the energy performance contract, which is coming to a close, which is also another avenue at no cost to the taxpayers to start grabbing high dollar items and projects. We replaced the lighting, all the district, the solar that's up in the back of the high school. Unit ventilators that were failing have been replaced. We put window film on all the windows, which helps the heating in the buildings. We've sealed all the doors and all those other spaces. I'm trying to think what else major was on that. The weather stripping, that's what so that, again, is just another avenue for us to go and grab those bigger projects, but you're also limited in that, and there's a lot of restrictions in an energy performance contract because payback has to be within 18 years, correct? Yes. So you have to get your energy savings from what you pay and you're borrowing to do that project. You start seeing a savings in your utilities for that same amount, and you have to make yourself whole within 18 years. So as a result, you're budgeting for the expense of paying the borrowing, but at the same time, you're reducing your utility costs for the same amount. And you're getting, so you don't always get aid. This district, we're fortunate enough that the community supported that energy performance contract, which allows us to get the additional 10% aid. So we were originally only going to get 68%, but because the voters approved us doing that project, we're getting 78%. So with the building aid and then the energy savings that we're seeing, it's cost neutral to our budget. So our taxpayers are not seeing any impact on that in their tax bill. So we're looking at, within the BCS, potentially exploring another phase 2 of the energy performance contract. That's forthcoming. Conversations are just starting. So again, it's just another avenue for us to start grabbing capital projects and a lot of work that needs to be done. I believe one energy performance contract was done many, many, many years ago. Things are constantly evolving within that realm, such as, the solar panels now on the outside. We have some solar panels down at Clayton Huey on the roof. We were going to put more on that roof, but it couldn't hold the load. So that's where we had to kind of start shifting gears and what else can we do with the funds. Many would say, well, replace your boiler. If you replace and have a more efficient boiler, you can get your money back. However, the payback on a boiler is 40 or 50 years, not 18 years. So you can't do a boiler. It's very hard to grab a boiler into an energy performance contract. So it's just another, if you hear us, we've been talking, and it's been in a lot of our presentation of projects that we've done in the past in order to try to start tackling those lists on the building condition survey that we do. And again, once this is, should we have a successful vote, we'll check off a lot of list items from that BCS, and then with our new one coming up, we'll see what else. Yes?
I have a few questions. Number one, you keep on saying the first time, and now this one, the community input. How was that done?
For the development of it?
Community.
So we had a bond committee that we started almost 2 years ago. We're in year 2 of that committee. where we had about 30 people on that committee, we put it out to the public, anybody that wanted to join.
How did you put it out to the public?
It was announced at board meetings, and then we posted up on our website where all of our committees are listed.
But not everybody's computer savvy. Because I have a newsletter here
Yes,
that was sent out to everyone.
yes.
How come it was not sent it out like this? That we have issues occurring, that what is your opinion? 40 people to give an opinion, to me, doesn't cut it. There's 7,700 people who live in this community, and they just get a small percentage of saying things. And who picked these individuals to be on these committees?
We didn't pick anybody. It was completely volunteer. Those that signed up were on the committee. Many of them are here. Quite a few of them are here tonight. And it was also word of mouth through the committee members of reaching out to their neighbors. Hey, this is what the school is doing. Please join us. We had members who were students all the way up to senior citizens retired in the district. Any committee members that may want to add on to how we went through this process. It was a lengthy process. It was a lot of conversation. And then they would all go back to the community and talk to their neighbors to try to get further input in order to determine where this list would fall.
Well, that-
We also did quite a few presentations at board meetings over the past 2 years for this.
Well, I don't think you got to everybody. Okay. And I really have a problem with that. Okay. Okay.
Feedback from the second one was mailed to me.
What's that?
The feedback after the first one was mailed to me.
There was a postcard that was sent to all community members to please give us feedback on that bond and input. And we had a pretty decent response on that.
Well, I would like to see the results of that survey, what was done. Okay.
Yeah, it's on the
Was this
website.
whole
Yeah,
thing?
you could go, we could give you the link to the, watch it, actually.
Yeah, there was any here, was this called? A thought exchange survey?
Yeah.
How many people were involved with that? And what was the questions and what was the result of that?
So there's only one question that gets asked, right? Only one. And it was strictly feedback on the bond. What did you like? What did you not like? It's an open. So the thought exchange, you might want to butcher this now, is an open-ended comment.
Right.
Not even
So
gonna-
it basically,
not wrong.
there's narrative that talks about what we put out there as a bond. And then people are able to go into the thought exchange and make comments. When they make their comments, then others in the community are able to rate those comments. And so essentially, if somebody says, one of the comments was, I would never support a turf field. And then a lot of people liked that comment. And a lot of people rated that very high.
But that's
Meaning,
the term, a lot.
correct,
What is that percentage?
more than 25.
Numbers are key.
More than 25 people chimed in and rated that individual comment would be a threshold that we would say that has some value. So if 25 other individuals, this was mailed to the 7,000 individuals in the community, and we had, a couple hundred people.
Yeah.
We gave everybody in the community an opportunity to, if people chose not to log in, or people chose not to access it, we can't force people to come to something. We can put it out there and say, this is what we did. We did this based on the input of 35 individuals in our community. It went down. We recognized that we want to get feedback from our community, so we put that out there and ask people for feedback.
You really didn't get it into the community. That's the point I'm bringing up.
So that's your opinion, and what I would tell you is we did our best to get the word out there, and we can disagree.
Well, you
So
see,
the
I-
results of that presentation, thought exchange, we did a presentation at a board meeting with all those results, which is up on our website. So you can go and see what all those numbers are.
How would you like to see? I think it's a valid question that I'd like to hear. That didn't reach everybody, we hear that. What would reach you, or the folks that thought exchange didn't reach? In what manner would reach you in an acceptable way? Or a way that gets to more people?
It's some type of printed material, like a newsletter or something, okay? Of that sort. Like I said, not everybody's computer savvy.
Understood. So the thought exchange went out. It was a postcard mailed to every home after the bond was first put down. I don't know how the committees were put out. I don't know if there was a newsletter sent out that committees are open. I can't speak that. I don't remember. I was on the committee. It's been a year and a half that we've been meeting going over this. So there's avenues, but I think that's important as to how do we reach everybody? There's no one way to do it. You're absolutely right. There's no 4 ways to do it. So what is the best way? So a mailer went out and said, give us your thoughts. And we had, I think it was 200 distinct responses, and I believe, I'm going to memory here, close to 2,000 inputs to those comments on that thought exchange. Is it representative? I can't speak to that. I'm not a statistician. I'm not going to say it is or isn't. It's anonymous, so I don't know that those 200 comments were students with parents, kids in the district, or they were, retirees or people without children in the district. It's anonymous in that category, so I don't know who would actually comment on it. So I'm genuinely curious because this is something I struggle with too about reaching the community. I wanted to get out to the community as much as I can. I've been involved all over Facebook trying to spread information and discussing things on it for even back at the beginning of it when the bond first came out, asking input. Not computer savvy, and I completely understand. So that's something that we're in a good format now. How can we reach you for bond aside, future issues, whatever they may be? What for you and your people that that didn't get contacted or don't feel you were, how can we reach you? What do you feel is the best way to do it?
Well, I think more than one mailing is not sufficient.
Okay.
Number one. For the simple fact is that what really gets me is that the first bond issue was put up for $45 million. Now, let me see now, 5 months later, you know what? We don't have to spend that much money. We only have to spend 13 million, 14 million.
It's not entirely true.
What are you talking about? The first one was for 45,
Right, and there were
$44 million, is that correct?
that is correct.
Okay, and what is this for?
This is just under 14.
Okay, so why do you think that's not correct?
So this 14 is the very base things, the health and safety from the building survey, or the health and safety priority number 1 issues. That's what's on the 14. There were other things when you go through the $44 million bond. There were wants, if you will. There were needs. There were things that had to get done. Those are still in this one. And then there were wants. There were things that we wanted to improve the school with that we knew were wants, and it wasn't accepted, and that was okay. So we went back and said, okay, what are the things that we absolutely have to do, knowing that this is the chance right here.
But my feeling is this, okay, I'm looking at these 2 different proposals, okay, and I'm thinking, they wanted us to spend this amount of money, and now they want us to spend only this amount of money. Let me see now. So you tell me that $30 million really wasn't essential.
Essential?
Yes, it wasn't. Okay.
But that's how improvements get done.
Let me finish, please. Okay, it wasn't essential, but now this is essential. And now you're supposed to be getting the community to give you input that this is essential?
All of this was in the big bond as well. There's nothing new in this one. So this is a subset of the big bond.
I have a problem.
Of the
I understand.
44 million, there are still
I don't have a
items.
problem with that, but the simple fact is, it's kind of really laughing. You say that there's a 2% cap on the budget, school budgets. Fine. Now the problem that we have is you know what, though? We can only spend this amount. But 15 years down the road, we're gonna let stuff deteriorate to the point where we have to put out a bond. Now, let me see now. Who pays for that bond? The taxpayers. You keep on saying free to the taxpayers. Nothing is free. Sooner or later, the buck has to be paid by someone, and that someone is the community. And this is what I'm getting at, is that when you only have X amount of people saying that these are the things that we need to do, but you wanted the whole community to spend this amount, there's a problem there. And that's the problem I have, okay? You know, because after 15 years, you know what? We're gonna spend more money. So this whole thing about $111, I'd like to know where that assessment, that money, where is the benchmark for that? So the average home in Center Riches, you say it's only gonna cost
The
this
assessor,
bond.
the town assessor, we get that number from them,
Okay, but is that the average home,
for the average home, correct?
the average home?
That's from the town assessor's office, and we update that.
Okay, and can you tell me what that is?
28.
2,800.
Look at your tax bill.
No, I understand what it is, but they're talking about the average.
Right, and I want to say it's about just over $2,800 is what the average assessed value of a home is in some places.
That's too low.
But that's the average assessed, not your full value.
With the,
It's not your
with the
full value.
equalization rate applied.
I think most houses are at least 34.
We have to go off what the assessor gives us.
Back to that, the amount that is gonna be put on each tax bill, does that include the deduction that store enhanced and all that?
That does not.
Because then that's gonna get passed on to people that don't have store.
That does not, that is just
That's
taking
gonna be
straight
hard.
assessed value and to school taxes, that's it. So if you have that enhancement or star, there would be another
Well,
savings for
I'm
you.
just saying, I think you have to be 65. Sorry.
For the enhanced, yes, but there's also income levels, the way they've changed that to work, more people don't qualify for it than do, unfortunately, the way they modified it a few years back.
Do you have an idea, so if we vote on this, and then basically 2 months later, we're voting on a budget? Do you have
Yes.
any idea what the exact budget will be?
So we have next week at our board meeting,
That's gonna be-
Thursday night is our third workshop for the budget, where we'll be presenting a hefty presentation about the program curriculums of the district for next year and what we're anticipating, as well as an update on budget. So we've already done 2 presentations, but like I said, this is kind of the meat of it. We adopt the budget on April 15th. So we're slowly getting to what that final number
But
is.
I think people should know that before they vote on this, because.
We
okay,
we
vote on
unfortunately
this,
won't know that because we don't have state aid numbers yet. So we're kind of
Do you
in
have
a
any
predicament.
idea? what-
Any idea?
So and again, as you talked about before, we talked about the governor's cuts. The budget is due April 1st. However, given Good Friday is the 20th of March, there's no way they can have that budget. I mean, they could, but likely it'll be in the first or into the second week of April. In our advocacy, we have emphasized that, with the governor and with the legislators that with 337 school districts out of 700 in the state having severe cuts to foundation aid, that we need to have a budget for mid-April because we all have to adopt budgets to put up to our communities.
So our,
Likely it will be in time for us to adopt, but
but
otherwise we're gonna have
our
to go-
tax levy, we put that
Yeah,
out there.
that's actually better.
We have a tax levy limit that gets calculated every year that unless we exceed that, we need 60% voter approval on that one. This
and
board,
you
nor
asked
do
for-
we support what's called piercing the cap. Our levy limit for next year's budget is at 2.46% increase. We don't know, at this
So
point.
we can't exceed that.
That's our maximum.
2.46%. That would be the max.
Right, so that's the
Wherever
best
the board
information we
decides
could
to
give you
set it,
tonight.
we can't be more than
But
2.46%
people
more
have
than we were
already
last year.
voted for this, and then.
This doesn't have an impact on that. Because we
No,
won't
but
be,
this
It
is,
impacts
what you're
the
saying is
tax.
this
it,
is an
this,
increase.
we wouldn't start seeing this until 25-26 budget year. There's no impact on next year's budget with this.
Would you be looking to pierce the tax cap?
No,
No,
no, we will not. Yes,
Yeah, no.
So to answer your question, I think more than one mailing should be sent out. Okay, several. Sure. Listen, at my school, I was on the executive board for the Alumni Association. We had about, 3,000-4,000 people. Yes, we sent stuff out by email, but we also sent stuff by the mail. The old one. Okay, and that's what we really should do. Okay.
So just to be clear, if we approve this, down the road, we still won't be piercing the tax cap that we collect.
So-
Our long-term projections do not include piercing the tax.
So
We do 4-year projections.
We do 4-year projections, we don't foresee that, we can't go any further than that.
Right.
But we're not projecting that. But again, I don't know, crystal ball, I can't make promises, but that's not in the foreseeable future for us.
We,
And again, you know, I mean, I think the first year, so going back about 12 years ago, in the first year, I was in a district where we had to raise the cap because it was just a budget crisis. It's hard, you can't, it changes the proposed paradigm, and to get people, 60% of the community to say that we're gonna pierce the cap. The failure rate on a pierce is horrendous.
Yeah.
So I would not ever probably recommend to avoid it to pierce the cap, unless we were.
So is there gonna be, once let's say this bond gets voted through, is there a maintenance plan in place so that we can kind of hear what people are saying about the maintenance of the building? I know we have $100,000 that we're keeping to preserve things, but like, is there a list of other items in which we know will have to be done so that people can feel comfortable that if they do vote this through, that they're kind of being heard, that the maintenance and upkeep maybe doesn't have to come back to a bond in future years, which who knows, that'll be a conversation 15 years from now, I don't know, whatever it is.
and that's the
But-
thing, with that 44 million, there's still things that were in that are needs. The locker room here in the middle school is original to this building, it's in repair.
So I-
But it was not a priority item of health and safety. It looks ugly, it needs to be done, so that's been pulled out. There's still some other things that need to get done.
And that's
But
something
what
that
we
we feel
focused
that
on was
we could
right now.
match somehow down the road, like throughout the next 15 years. Like say, how long is this, the tail for this? 15, so throughout the next 15 years to address some of the other concerns that may arise, we feel we have a good financial plan in order to be able to sustain kind of getting at these list items per se. And that doesn't have to be perfect, but
And that's
No,
where,
no,
that's where the
but-
5-year capital plan comes into
To that point, Brian, that's where we have, capital outlay projects. And quite honestly, a district like ours, if they change it to a $250,000 capital outlay project, that would mean the world to us to be able to build things into our general fund and get a 78% reimbursement immediately. We don't have to wait over 15 years to get that money back. That would make,
yeah,
that would be a game changer.
I
for
guess
us
I'm
to be able
saying
to
it,
do a lot of these
I
things.
guess I'm saying it in the sense because I feel like we have a community that's split. Why do we have a community that's split? Because in 2002, taxes flew up from a bond. Was it? I'm guessing a year, because it wasn't.
That was just-
So it wasn't a bond.
That was
That was
general, right? So,
Yes.
General budget.
so
Right.
I wasn't here, I was just coming out of high school then. So I wasn't paying taxes. But you hear it in the community and people get fearful of this stuff. And I think the questions that you're asking are actually phenomenal because you're asking the right questions. Like, what is this gonna do to me? That might be the difference between oil, gas, heat, whatever it is for that month. And, I'm actually encouraged to hear these questions come out because I think this is some of the stuff that people are talking about on social media, unfortunately, because they're fearful of what the tax implication is gonna do. And then we have the other side that realizes we have to get some of this stuff done because, we are in some ways have to do this for the school and for the community and for honestly for the natural values of your property. So we get stuck between this rock and a hard place because you have years of stuff that was put forward. You can go back to 7 years ago was one of the bonds. So whatever it was, like we had bonds prior to this that went forward that was $27 million roughly, and then it went to $43 million because of the inflation after COVID. So at some point, obviously we know we have to address some stuff, but what I'm happy to hear is that people are asking the questions that, it's okay to say, hey, we're scared of where our numbers are going to go. We're scared, but what's the plan? And I think it's important for us to move that forward so that they feel comfortable, maybe in board meetings, we can build something in that gives a building outline, a building plan moving in.
So yeah, and that's where like this 5 years, so the BCS is what
I'm
triggers
saying, like,
now,
every board meeting.
updating our 5-year capital
Like every
plan.
board meeting, even if it's not.
And we, within, either through the budget process or stuff, it hasn't been dedicated, you're
Yeah.
correct. We do try to work it into other presentations here and there. But it's certainly something we can
Yeah,
look
I think
at.
it's something that, because most people are saying, what happened, where to go, why to go into dire straits, why are the auditoriums seats are like the fan favorites, right? Everyone wants to know about the auditorium seats. Some people are blaming kids. I don't know, if you sit on a chair after a while, it's gonna win, right? I don't know, maybe a kid did pull at it, maybe an adult pulled at it, you don't know. We have a lot of people in and out of that auditorium. But at the end of the day, maybe we build something in that allows us to build that trust within the community for them to hear, hey, we took this $100,000 this month and we were able to utilize this. And again, like I said, it might be nothing that month, but at least maybe we just make it a line, because then people can feel like at least we're hearing that they're not hearing how, what, when, or where. And we can say, hey, this was our maintenance plan. We got to do this. You know, it's almost like a honey-do list, but it's a public honey-do list.
No, and I stated that earlier, you know, happy to see that we have a group of people here. We did this same forum for the $44 million back in October. There were 3 of you in this room. There were 3 of you in this room. It was advertised, it was in the mailer, it was in the bond brochure, it
I
was
was
out
one of
there.
the 3, and I was disappointed as a community member seeing only the 2 other community members here. And there was a mailer back in October, so.
So this is the feedback that we've been looking for,
think it was such a
and
large number,
we're
what's
happy
supposed
to
to say?
hear. How can we make things better? How can we better communicate? So I thank you for letting us know how you want communication, is how we've been able to try to get things out there. And we'll continue to do our best to get that information to you.
And that's fine, except that this economic climate we're in right now,
Mhm.
the fire department had 2 bonds
Yes,
for 17 million, and both of them were defeated.
yes.
Closely, but they were defeated. Now, you know, that's telling us something. So when the bond come for 45 million, I'm sure people realize before they even voted, this is not gonna fly. Okay, so that's probably why there was only 3 people there.
Right, but you can't say that you weren't notified, Jeff. If you didn't attend the meeting, that's different than saying you weren't given an opportunity.
No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm
Well,
saying,
you were
no.
saying previously that it wasn't communicated that these meetings were taking place. So if you received the communication that said
No, I wasn't talking about that.
24 is such a big
I was
number,
talking
I'm not
about
worried
the
about it.
survey, that's what I'm talking
Okay.
about. That's totally
Okay.
different.
What happens if this bond is defeated?
It's a good question. We go back to the drawing board, we go back to the Board of Education, and, we have to figure out what we're doing. Should a boiler fail and we have no heat in the building, school will be closed until we replace that boiler. We could potentially have to pass an emergency resolution to increase the budget, which would then in turn increase the taxes on the taxpayer. So, and that would be, that's a health and safety that is a must. However, correct me if I'm wrong, in our BCS, it is known that our boilers are on their way out, they're beyond their useful life. If you've not acted on that and took care of it, and now you find yourself in that emergency, that it's irreparable, fallen, and you're shutting the school because of it and replacing it, you will not pay. So that $3 million boiler is now costing you $3 million. Through the bond, that $3 million boiler is getting 78% aid. Because we know in our BCS, which is sent to the state every 5 years, that boiler is an issue, and we need to be proactive and act on it and get it replaced. We've been putting money in, we budget annually. Just this boiler here, which is one of our newer ones, they are replacing the tubings this past summer. About 5 or 6 of those tubings had to be replaced, and every time they pulled one out, they saw another crack. And that's a hefty expense. But it was able to be done over the summer, so it didn't affect the heat in the building. We were up and running once the heat was here. So that's essentially what we would be doing.
Come out of those ends.
Yes, and this is a problem. I mean, nobody likes paying more taxes. I was one of the people, like probably many, that voted against the 44 million, but I think it would be irresponsible for the community to vote against this proposal because, I'm sorry, I agree with that. Because most of us have homes or businesses or whatever. We never like spending money as a business owner, investing in boilers and roofs and whatnot. But we can pay now, we can pay later. And again, I think it would be irresponsible for the community to, say, no, we're not gonna pay for this, only to find out, 5 years down the line, or maybe next year that we're gonna have to pay it all out of pocket. 100%.
Can you just clarify that point that you just made with respect to if this bond were to fail and something like the boiler were required, it broke and it needed to be replaced, how we would fund that immediately and what would be how would we
So
do
the
that?
board passes an immediate resolution to increase the budget. They would have to increase the budget by the cost of that.
And that tax levy.
And then that would in turn increase the taxes on them.
Which would presumably be at a higher rate than being able to.
Than what we had originally,
Put this
if
out
we're
there.
at, last year, our levy limit was over 3%. We were able to do a budget at 1.99%. If we had to add 3 million mid-year because the boiler failed and we have to replace, we now have to, we're not 1.99, we have to raise the funds in order to do it, because there's no reserve to pay for that. There's no other funding source.
It becomes an immediate expense.
It's an emergency resolution. Yeah.
Okay,
So
I
what-
think that's.
So it's similar to kind of what happened with Superstorm Sandy, a lot of building, insurance did cover a lot for a lot of districts, but boards were passing emergency resolutions to get, just so you can immediately get your building up and running again. And then you deal with insurance and who's gonna pay for what later. But even, if the roof collapsed, it might not be insurance. The facade that fell over at Clayton Huey, we tried going through insurance. It was right after, it was Labor Day weekend, there was a bad storm, we came back to crumbling, we called insurance, they came and then said, yeah, rain and wind did not do this. This is an old building and it's just deteriorating. We try as much as we can to get insurance to cover, but the other is you gotta be careful how much you put through insurance. As you know, as a homeowner, as a car owner, you use it, you gotta pay for it. So, beginning of the school year, we had extensive mold in the library. We went through insurance. We weren't sure if they were gonna cover it. They covered it. That was $100,000. So if they didn't cover it, we had to find $100,000 in the budget to pay for that, because we had to get the up and running and have it safe. So those are the things, but when you're talking millions of dollars, there's not millions of dollars especially in the budget. We spend our budget every year at 8% of spending, sometimes a little bit closer to 100. So it just depends on the situations in the year and what we're doing.
Is the 1.5 allocated for anything so far in capital reserve?
No.
So does that just sit there and we continue to build it?
Until we decide, and usually, and that's through board meetings and conversation, we would utilize our health and safety committee to try to develop what the recommendation would be.
So moving forward, if we try to do something with that 1.5, we can then work in, we're being asked about from the community standpoint, from some point to give as a mailer, something that allows for those that are not going to be on the computer as much as others. To be able
Yeah,
to
I mean,
know
and
what's going on.
simply through the bond committee, we had a committee member whose parents lived in a certain section of the district and knew nothing about the bond. Their daughter was on the committee, where she then started bringing him to our meetings to join us and kind of give us the feedback that we were asking for. How did you not know about it? How did you not hear it? We sent all the mailers. I never got the mailers. Why did you get them? To find out, they live in the 55 and older community. The post office just didn't include them in their run. So when we get the count from the post office, they didn't include them in our count. We then went to call the post office to find out. We now had to up the count by about 700 households and specifically tell the postal carrier, please bring these to that community. Unfortunately, we can't control the post office. I do know people that, get some of our mails, don't get all of them. I can't say what the mailman's gonna deliver to you. We get the count, we send it out, drop it off at the post office to make sure that it gets to every resident. So that was an eye-opener to us. We didn't know, nobody was telling us. And that's why, I appreciate you telling us how can we communicate, and it was more so, how do we communicate those without children in the building? Our parents are getting the information because they're on the Connect Ads, they're on the website, their children are in the building, they're hearing, they're seeing. Those that are not, are retirees, how do we connect to them best? So I appreciate the feedback that we'll, keep in mind and going forward on how we can better communicate with those residents to make sure that everybody's fully informed of what's going on. Yes.
What my wife was saying, I've voted in other districts. When they have the budget vote, they do have their bond on that same line.
Some do, not many. It's
Why aren't we putting that up as one, like a bond in the budget together?
it's not common. It is done rarely, and it's just not recommended to do it. It's just not recommended to do. It's typically recommended to do them as two separate, to make it clear. You don't want people coming in and saying, no to the budget, yes to the bond, or vice versa. It's just, it's just recommended to keep them as separate
You want to
votes.
educate people, I think, you try to target what specifically you're trying to accomplish in each of those things. So sometimes the message is not only I think that's the
Because the CD and some things, what I told earlier about
So what our architect is saying is that because state education department approvals are out upwards of 6 months, if you wait to do it, and you wait an extra 2 months to get your bond passed, that puts you definitely into the next budget cycle to actually start the work.
So our first one,
You need
which was
26 weeks to get something approved.
So the first vote was strategically placed in October, knowing that we could get SD approval to start work in July. Our goal was to start doing the work in this upcoming summer. And that could have happened if we had a successful vote back in October.
Carrie's
But we're now at
optimistic
point,
winter
my
start.
optimistic winter start that they cringe at, depends on SD.
I think you made a mistake with the 44 million back in October.
Yeah, we were trying to be respectful of a pretty diverse committee that had a lot of ideas. Some of the things in there were, whether they were like an outdoor education space, a greenhouse that was actually a kid-driven idea to enhance our curriculum and build out on an agricultural pathway for children. It was about educational opportunities. Some of those things were things that were in there. For athletics, redoing the tennis court, things that really do need to be done. They're not just wants. They're things that really would enhance educational opportunities for kids. Are the things that were both the extras in there.
Well, the tennis courts were a patch job about 6 years ago now.
Correct.
So,
still looking at ways
so
to
that
get that
conversation's been going on in the district for quite some time. Weren't they deemed unplayable?
Say that?
Unplayable by section at one point, or they were?
No,
That's
they've
Did we
been,
borrow courts somewhere in the beginning? Like we went somewhere?
not since I've been here in the past 6 years, but we are right now investigating how we can
Make it playable?
make it work of a redo, not through the bond, like,
Do we have an
We're
estimated amount on like what that looks like?
well, that's what we're working on. We had to have the environmentalists come in to do borings to determine what is the base layer looking like, how far down we have to go, which will drive what the cost is. So, we're working on the estimates to figure out what we can do with those costs. Because they are,
It was a
Tennis court
partnership.
came up, I just remember 6, 7 years ago, the board meeting was a patch job, we had to get it fixed because it wasn't playable, the cracks were going through.
Right.
So I mean, there's definitely stuff that's been lingering for
We were
years.
exploring partnerships with Brookhaven Town to try to have the work done, really trying to get creative to try to save the taxpayers. But some of those didn't happen.
Isn't the taxes you collect year to year? That's what I don't understand, that you collect year to year. Supposed to some of it go to wearables? But they don't have to be captured, that there is regular maintenance on
we budget for regular maintenance. Like I said, we budget,
But
we were
everything has a
budgeting,
life expectancy.
right, and we
it.
were budgeting to
We're not
reseal the
talking
parking
about
lots every
doing
year.
the tennis courts,
No, we are.
fixing them. So that's not
Well, because it's out of the
the
bottom.
whole thing,
Right.
you gotta redo this, that is maintenance.
So maybe something, can that part of that 1.5 come out of the numbers are for tennis court? But that's what I'm saying, like the voters,
Right, but it would have to
If
be
it's-
done, as I said before, it has to be done with that project being done inside. So otherwise you're not gonna get aid. You can't do projects on the outside to your courts, your facilities like that. It has to be done with a
Yeah.
small little thing at least inside so that you can grab the aid on that project.
so we're gonna, because even that, when you look at athletics, that's the health and wellness as well.
Yeah.
So if our field are not playable or up to conditions, then obviously we have to worry about that because the kid gets hurt.
So our backstops were another one that we have. There's there are athletic operators in
There's a big gap here between the 40 million and the 13 that we're doing now. You said we have a 5-year capital plan. Do you anticipate putting forward another bond within the next 5 years
No.
to fund that gap, or is this the only bond we're looking at?
No, I think the big bond was just that, because, we are the only district in the area that does not have dedicated music space. So the music department and the theater people in our community really wanted some dedicated music space. That was a big part of that bond, that was $6 million. Our athletic parents really wanted to see something done with that athletic wing. The athletic wing is a cinder block wing that really would require extensive renovation. That was a very significant part of that bond. That was in the $3 to $5 million. But to redo, so right there was like $13 million in renovations that would have enhanced the music department, as well as our athletics. Yeah, no,
Right, the additional music suite space, that would be brand new construction.
that would have been brand new construction, right? Yeah. That would have been an addition to create a space for, so we had, these were not just, we were not throwing spaghetti at the wall to see what sticks. We were really thinking deeply about ways to really compete. When you walk into the facilities, the sports have matter, when you walk into the facilities at West Hampton Beach, they outshine us dramatically. And they outshine us dramatically because of the facilities they have, the athletic facilities, the music facilities, and there was a part of the community that really wanted to see us to be able to compete with those two schools and the facilities that they have. Esports South Matter will have 7 turf fields this year.
Is the Matterville tax system going for school? Are they in charge?
Say that again?
Matterville? They have no tax for Matterville. Like, don't they pay tax?
Oh, I don't know, I don't know their tax base or,
Mine have risen significantly.
yeah, you can ask a resident.
Yes.
So it's 8%, aid. This should be like, we should be doing yearly rolling capital, and it actually will generate income. The revenue will just generate, it'll just create inertia. We should every year, and that's how you create your maintenance that you're speaking of. The bond will bring us essentially afloat, and then that year we roll the money that we can have, and we can generate income on that 78% aid. This district really could be, it could all happen through state aid. Slowly.
Right. We had, when Dr. Sarah and I came in, we had said that looking at the debt of the district and the aid and what was falling off, when debt's falling off, when is aid falling off, we both said shoot, bond really needed to be done either the day we got here or we should have been starting that capital work to keep that going, to smooth that out. But it wasn't, and then to compound that, we had COVID. So our work, we started working ourselves internally of a plan. How do we start looking at a bond and where are we at to say, okay, this is where we gotta go, and then a pandemic hit. So it kind of delayed our process. So we really just kind of found ourselves in a situation
You
now.
didn't start a capital reserve in 2016-17?
Capital reserve? No. 2021 is the first time. There's been a repair reserve on the books.
Okay, that's
Yeah,
what it
we've
was.
always had.
Yeah, just
Okay,
repair
repair
reserve.
reserve is not.
It's not an aidable thing. Yeah.
Just that, it's all liquid, you get figured out on it. So it's, at the end of the day, coming out of the meeting and coming out of what we're seeing is, if we can just find ways to communicate to help everyone feel comfortable, and the firehouse went down by like 2 votes, I think, on the last one. The hard part is we were actually piggybacking one another, which is hard. Even communicating in the future with the firehouses and making sure that their bond's going, when are we going, and I know that's not a perfect science, but firehouses are very difficult actually to pass. If you look at like Middle Island, it's probably about 12 years to get theirs passed, right? So when you guys are 10 years out from that, do we feel that future administration with this bond is in a good place to continue with keeping this place afloat and what they need to do?
There's definitely another bond vote in future years. It's just not in the immediate future. Based on, right now, it's immediate repairs. And as we do the updated building condition survey report, and we go through and say, okay, if this bond is successful, these are things coming out of that report. In addition, we've gotten a lot through the capital outlay done, that was in that report. And in addition, through the general fund budget, we checked off a lot of those lists. So every time we do a project, we have to update that also and send it to the state to say, we're working on it, we're doing the best we can to work on these items. And from that, we then build out our next 5-year plan, which would be presented at a board meeting publicly to say, here's the BCS, here's the 5-year plan, and that work, it gets all done through the Health and Safety Committee, which is formerly known as the facilities.
So I guess I'm saying is,
When you anticipate that the DCS will be completed and on the shelf?
Fall of next year, we need to have it done right December. So we're starting the work this summer, this spring, and then it takes time to develop the report and we like go through that process. So we're looking at probably like early fall next year.
Just as a suggestion, I know it's painfully obvious to the administration, the school board that, you know, that the school board meetings, that occupancy benefits relative to the public participation most of the time. I would make the suggestion that once the BCS is done, and then you folks have digested it, that there be not at a board meeting, but a community forum like this, present the BCS and what the thoughts are of the administration as well as the school board about what should the community consider investing in over the next 5 to 10 years. Because it would be a shame if 10 years from now, 15 years from now, whoever's here sitting in the same room is talking about, you know, the next disaster that's waiting to happen.
Having the same conversation.
Right.
But how do we prevent that?
Right.
Yes.
Why would you not wait until you get the BCS involved for a more comprehensive needs package together? Rather than this kind of, well, let's pick this project or this project. If you're on a 5-year plan, and you're gonna get another 5-year plan from those two gentlemen sitting there and all these other volunteers to do work, why would you put a budget, a vote now forward when you're not sure if they're gonna come back and say, okay, you're gonna fix the boilers, but the roof of Clayton Hewitt needs to be fixed, the air conditioner over here needs to be fixed. That's gonna break down, we gotta find money for that. Why would you not bring that
These
down?
items are already in the BCS. So the original BCS we're working off of was 2021 when we started looking at it. So this process started in 2022 off of the original BCS. So we use that as a basis to move forward. Because of the timeline of it, now we're at the point, and also state that, you know, Terry, you know, the math doesn't add up, right? 2021, and the new one in 2024, state ed basically changed the cycle, if you will, of BCS reports. You're supposed to do them every 5 years, and they basically kind of took the state and redivided it and said a quarter of them go every year or so. You know, but they basically changed the queue for when they would do. So our BCS is due 4 years out instead of 5 years out this time.
But you know now that it's going to be the fall. So why would you not wait on this to make sure that what you're asking, because you're asking over $111 for a 2,800 whatever house. It's not, doesn't sound like a lot. Over 15 years, it's for some people a lot. But you're going to have these gentlemen do this, and it might change that not where they're here, but something else becomes a priority. Why would you not wait to have that report? It's a 5-year-old report. And we didn't do anything on that 5-year-old report. I get that, but things change in 5 years, so maybe something else takes priority over what you're presenting right now.
I think the best way to describe it would be the items that are on the report from 21, they're still gonna be on the report if they haven't done anything with them over the last 4 years. On the next cycle that we submitted, so that list will just keep growing of things that you haven't touched, things that aren't getting repaired, are still gonna continue to be reaching their end of life, that you're gonna have that vicious cycle just continue where that list will just keep growing.
So the boilers, for instance, were priority 3 in that original report from 2021, either 3 or 4.
3 or 4, yeah.
Priority 1s are like, you need to get these done immediately, but the boilers back in 2021 were a priority 3 item on the BCS, which is where in year 3 of the BCS, the boilers need to be addressed. So we need to, now they're gonna become a priority 1 item. And then there's gonna be new priority 3s and 4s.
But maybe the track is not priority 4.
It's priority 1. It's a health and
track is?
safety issue. Yeah, it's becoming a health and safety issue. The more it's deteriorating away, we're gonna have
I
an
think
issue.
that the report that came out in 21 took time to digest and figure out what, to prioritize those things. Then we started the committee. It took us a year to go through all these things back and forth. We kind of started with, like, these things that have to be done. It's kind of the absolute have to, that's that, and then we take the rest. So to wait for the next report in December would take another amount of, let's say it took 6 months this time, to formulate what that bond would be. So now you're into the following summer, you get the vote, and then you still have to wait for state education approvals. Now you're 2 years past now, a year and a half past now, to get those things done. I see your point, and it is interesting. I didn't realize we got chipped ahead by the year, but it's a good point that these things are only get worse, they're not gonna change. There may be more, there could possibly be more.
And I understand that, but I was just wondering, like, you're gonna come back, and we didn't touch anything in the last 5 years. None of that's changed, it hasn't gotten any better, it doesn't heal. So I get that, but it might be that, again, the track, the auditorium obviously is a icing type thing, I know that's a centerpiece. The boiler is something that we need to address.
Right.
But there might be something else that takes over that priority that you don't know until they look. So you're doing the bond now, and you might have to do a bond in 2 years again, because there's something else that the breaks were.
The other, should that come up, it could be, we're doing a $5 million bond. Or, you can do much smaller, you're not limited in how much you bond. You're encouraged, obviously, you get more for your money, but you're not limited. So, yeah, in 5 years from now, maybe we're looking at something and we're saying, hey, community, this is what's happening right now, we need $5 million. But we're not coming at you saying we need $41 million. That was made clear, not only in this vote, but at the 27 million that was done quite a few years ago also. So, we get it, we understand the pulse of the community. We had to go through some pains to get here to where we are, but, which is why we do these things. We appreciate the feedback and the information so that we can keep moving forward and planning as we do these things. Yes.
Can you put each thing as a separate bond and still get the state aid? Like you keep bringing up the boiler, maybe convey to the people that boiler has to get done. Put that $3 million budget up separate. This has to be done. This is what you get.
Basically, they don't work as our company, essentially. So you can't say, well, we'll take a boiler in the high school, but not in the elementary. You really put these things up, financing, everything that has to wrap around these things.
And it's more so for the borrowing purposes, for the state aid, for state aid
They
approval,
have to be done.
the time it takes to draw the specs and get all that out.
State aid, state aid, we did this as 4 or 5 different projects to try to get state aid.
It's gonna take 6 years to complete.
The timeline would be, it just goes on.
This 78% by the state, is that locked in?
So as I said before, we're locked in to get state aid. The actual percent could adjust by a point here and there. When I started in the district 6 years ago, we were at 76%. We're now at 78%. So it depends on the economy, it depends on the income, the combined wealth ratio of the district and the community.
That 78% is not a solid number.
No, that number could change by the time we lock in these projects. But we don't anticipate just by what we've been seeing over
Right now,
handful of years.
Right now, these numbers you're putting out
They're
are
just
all based
estimates based on what we
on
have.
78%,
Yes,
and then
and that's all we can do.
taxpayers are expected to pay the 22%.
Yes. Yeah. That, all the information we can get is what we know today.
Right.
Yes.
So Kathy Hochul decides she's not giving us the money, we're gonna be stuck.
No, well, we will get building aid. They don't cut the building aid. It has never been cut. Once you lock in these projects, you're getting your building
The 111 doesn't change.
aid. That could change depending on how much aid we get per project, if it goes up.
So what's
or-
Our financial analyst.
What's the ceiling? Is there a ceiling?
We believe the 111 is the ceiling, because we went with the higher interest rates on our projections for the borrowings. We're assuming 78% is locked in.
With the aid. So
Yes,
keep hearing, like, if we don't get the aid, we don't get the aid. Like, what's the ceiling without aid?
we'll be getting building aid.
I'm
We're
just trying
getting
to help
building
you. Yeah, it's the same question coming at you, so I'm just saying,
Yeah,
like,
I know.
we'll be getting it, I think it's a fair.
If we don't get building aid, we
We
get
are
orders
assured
involved.
building
We'll
aid.
have a situation on our
We are
hands.
sure building aid, again, it has
Yes,
risen in
especially
recent
saying
years, given the
on-
decrease in
yeah.
combined wealth ratio. But right now, it's at 70%. Our financial analysts, who are much smarter than, sorry, Karen.
They're smarter than me.
On my side.
This is not my, they're analysts, I'm not.
We rely on their expertise, and, they're.
You get this one every year.
It gets paid out
Yeah,
over
it
15
gets
years.
paid out over the 15.
So what was the building aid that you've been getting every year, and going towards not maintaining?
We haven't had a debt on our books in a couple of years.
The small amount of debt we have and the small amount of building aid we get now offset each other.
Right.
So that building aid we're currently getting is paying the debt we're paying off.
That's not a small amount.
You have to, so you have to spend the money to get. So if we expend $10 million next year, if everything approved, we would start to get 70% of that $10 million paid out to us over 50 years. That's how that. So no, we don't have anything coming through the property.
I just had a comment. that
Yes.
You're talking about what is the ceiling, we don't get state aid. The ultimate ceiling is the 2% tax cap, right? So.
Not for,
This is a separate one.
not for bond, tax cap has to do with your operating budget, but
Right, but the payments for the bond are.
It becomes
they're separate,
excluded, yeah.
they're separate
Separate.
from your operating budget.
Oh, this is separate from the,
Yes.
from the
Correct.
2% tax cap.
Yes.
So
This
on
is-
top of it.
Correct. This is basically saying that, to take care of our capital assets, we believe that we need this $14 million, and that would basically be separate apart from the $100 million per year.
So we approve a budget, this bond would be above and beyond the tax cap. Could be.
It becomes part of that, it gets excluded from the
Isn't it?
calculation,
Oh,
Yeah.
because you have to pay your debt back,
yeah.
given the choice.
Yeah.
So with that, I do thank you all for coming out and having the
Yeah,
conversation. It was great dialogue. Please stay informed. We have a dedicated page on the website, under District and Bond 2024. Vote next on Tuesday from 7 to 9, Clayton Viewing. Thank you so much. Have a great night.
Thank you, everyone.